just push it against the barrel and then choose the appropriate size hole in the strap. You get it through this hook like this, just like this, there, and get the band around the barrel, get the screw inside that hook, and tighten it up. Once again, it's a simple process. There is nothing complicated about it. An important thing to remember is that the mount has to be touching the barrel, metal to metal. There shouldn't be any padding in between. Some people are worried about scratching their barrels, but it's important that the system has a metal to metal connection on the barrel, because this allows the sensor to feel that vibration that comes from your trigger when you're taking that shot. Now, once we have that mount tightly clamped to the barrel, it's solid, it's not moving anywhere, you can just loosen this screw a little bit with the Allen wrench that came with the system, and slide the sensor onto the dovetail rail on the bottom of that mount. Once that's done, you just tighten it up, and you're good to go. Will be prone to less errors. One of the issues that you might run into at shorter distances, like we have here, we have the system only 5 meters away from the actual paper target, is the parallax effect. The problem is that the axis of the sensor, if it's mounted below the barrel, is quite a bit lower than the axis of your sight. The axis of the sensor is quite a bit lower than the axis of your sight. As you can see here, the axis of your sight is right about there, and the sensor is mounted at least a few inches below that. So at shorter distances, the field of view of the camera is narrow enough in order to not be able to see the actual bull. It will be looking below that bull. And we can see it as well on the screen, which shows you in the preview mode that while we're aimed at the target, the sensor is looking way below the bull. We can see it clearly there, which will in turn lead to the problem that the crosshairs will either be way below that white circle, or they will not be there at all if the parallax is even stronger. I mean, in this case we can at least see the bull within the field of view. Sometimes the parallax is strong enough to make the bull outside the field of view of the camera. This is of course the case for shorter distances, like 5 meters or below, or in some cases even 10 meters or below. So this parallax effect is evident at distances of 5 meters or below, or sometimes even at distances at 10 meters and below. So what you can do is you can shift the sensor closer to the axis of your sight in order to compensate for parallax. Basically, unlike many people tend to think, the sensor does not have to be mounted on the bottom of the barrel. It doesn't have to be below the barrel. You can just rotate it and have it at an angle like this, so it would be closer to that line of sight, to that axis of sight. And as we can see in the picture here, this brings the sight picture of the sensor, the field of view, directly to the center of the target. So, and our crosshairs should be closer to the middle as well. That's one way of dealing with the parallax. Another way is using those bricks. So once you have the sensor mounted on the gun, you can proceed with your practice. The first thing you'll need to do is press the Start Practice button, enter the shooter's name, and pick the same exact target that you had printed before on the paper, or whichever paper target you're using. So basically the target that you pick from this list must correspond to what you have on the paper. Otherwise the sensor will not recognize this. As we've seen before, we have a 10-meter air rifle target in this case, and that's what I'm picking. After that you click Start, and you have four checkboxes here, which all account for different things. The first one is the indoor mode. Obviously this should be on since we're doing this indoor. The underlighting conditions stands for low light conditions, and you might or might not need to have it on. I'll just have it on because it doesn't hurt to have it. The filter foreign shots mode is for cases when you're shooting at a range and there is someone next to you live firing. The sensor might pick up someone else's shot as your shot if it's very loud. So if you're doing this live fire on a range, you might need to switch this on. We don't need it since we're on our own here. The preview mode I'll get to in a few seconds. This sliding adjustment is to set the sensitivity of the sensor to the click that the gun produces. And it's a little bit counterintuitive because the smaller this value is, the more sensitive it will be, and the more noises and vibrations it will pick up. For dry fire, we usually recommend a value of 5, 10, or 15%. Should be good. For live fire, you can go up to 50, 80, or even 90%. So now, in calibration, what you're looking for is to take that first shot as carefully as possible and make sure that it lands in the center of the target, according to your own sight. Not according to the screen, but according to your own sight, it should be in the center. Because at this point, the sensor learns where to your sight picture center is. Therefore, you can cheat whichever way you can. Use a bench or any other type of arrest, as long as that shot goes to the center. In order to make sure that the sensor is seeing the target properly, you might need to use the preview mode. The preview mode, you can't calibrate out of it, but it's very useful to see if the sensor is seeing the target properly. And that's what we're going to use now. The sensor basically will give you a raw feed of the image that it's seeing. So now we can see the image of the target. We can see that the bull is nice and crisp. The area around it is white, and that's important because this is actually the way to make sure that your lighting is fine. This slider here on the bottom, it adjusts the brightness of the preview mode. And when it's in the middle, your paper should be bright white around the bull. The paper around the bull should be crisp white. This gives you the understanding that you have enough lighting. And we have plenty of light, so I'm going to go ahead and turn off the underlighting conditions, the low light conditions. And after you're sure that your sensor is seeing the target is within the field of the view, and it's bright and crisp, you can go ahead and turn the preview mode off and start looking for crosshairs. So once you have the preview mode off, you need to look for crosshairs in this white circle. They don't have to be necessarily in the middle of the circle, they just have to be anywhere. Just make sure that you are going to shoot at the center of the target according to your own sight. Okay, so once that first shot was taken, the calibration window will close. So after you've taken the calibration shot, the calibration window will close and you will see the image of your target. This yellow corner indicates that you are in sighting mode. The program allows you to take a few sighting shots to make sure that the calibration went fine and that you're centered well on the target. If not, it will allow you to make adjustments. So you take a shot and you compare it to where you call the shot should be. So in this case, as we can see, the shot landed at 9 o'clock almost. And what you need to do is you take that shot and you drag it. You take the shot and you drag it closer to where it should be. So if you call this a 10, you take it and you drag it closer to that 10. Not all the way there because the system might overcompensate, but halfway or close to it. And then you go ahead and you take another shot. The system will now count this adjustment for this following shot. Okay, so as we can see, the second shot was actually very well made, and the general hold is actually in the center, so we can call it that it's pretty well sighted. This process might take 2 or 3 shots sometimes, but usually anywhere from 1 to 3 or 4 shots is plenty to get the system sighted in. After you're done sighting the system and you are sure that the results on the screen correspond to what you call your shots, you can click match mode and the system will go into the match mode. The yellow triangle will disappear and the statistics for your shots, the shot list, will start counting over. So as you can see here, the match will start counting all over and your sighting shots will be listed as a separate